Carrying them through the darkness and cold, the man was no longer a stranger but a guardian, a flicker of light in a place where shadows had ruled for too long. The city's indifferent roar faded behind them, replaced by a quiet that promised something new, a beginning forged in kindness. That night, in a small room warmed by flickering candlelight and the steady hum of a heater, the mother dog curled protectively around her shivering puppies. The scent of fresh blankets replaced the stench of rain and rot. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a sky smeared with stars and a promise of dawn. The man sat silently, watching them. His heart ached with every rise and fall of their fragile breaths. He saw in the mother's tired eyes a story he knew too well, one of loss, fear, and a desperate hope to survive. His own hands, rough from years of labor, gently traced the outlines of those tiny bodies as if willing strength into their fragile forms. In that quiet room, time slowed. Each heartbeat, each small whimper, each soft sigh was a thread weaving the fragile fabric of new life. The weight of the world outside had not vanished, but here, in this fragile bubble, hope had begun to take root. The mother dog lifted her head and met the man's gaze. No words were exchanged, none were needed. In that look was a silent promise. I will fight for them, and you will fight for us. Together, in this quiet sanctuary, the first fragile steps toward healing had begun. The rain was gone, but its echo lingered, the sound of survival, of courage, and of a love that refuses to be broken. The morning after the storm broke open a fragile dawn. The world outside remained heavy with mist and the damp scent of earth and wet stone. Inside a small, cramped room far from the cold alley, the mother dog lay curled tightly, her body still trembling with exhaustion, but slowly relaxing into the tentative safety of soft blankets and warm light. Her puppies, once shivering and barely breathing, now nestled closer to her warmth, their small bellies rising and falling with new life. The man who had found them sat quietly nearby, his eyes never leaving the fragile family. His hands, calloused and scarred from years of hard work, now moved gently, hesitating as if afraid to break the fragile trust that was still so new and delicate. Every movement was slow, deliberate, a silent vow to protect rather than frighten. He reached out, offering small sips of water to the mother, coaxing her to drink with soft, reassuring words. His voice was a balm against the echoes of abandonment, each word like a quiet prayer. At first, the mother flinched, every instinct screaming that this stranger could be danger. But the warmth in the man's eyes, the softness in his hands, cracked through the walls she had built around her heart. She allowed herself to be touched, just barely, and the puppies stirred, sensing the shift in their protector's spirit. The fragile bond between rescuer and rescued was born in those silent moments, a fragile, flickering flame against the shadows of fear. The man named her Luna for the faint, ghostly light she held within her tired gaze, a light he refused to let fade. The puppies, tiny and vulnerable, were given names too, whispered softly as the man watched over them through long, restless nights. Each breath they took was a victory, every fragile movement a step away from death's edge. In the days that followed, the small room became a sanctuary. The rain outside softened to drizzle, the sky breaking open to reveal hesitant rays of sun that filtered through dusty windows. The man worked tirelessly, patching wounds both visible and unseen. He bathed Luna carefully, her body still weak, but beginning to show signs of healing. The dullness in her eyes slowly replaced by flickers of recognition, of something close to hope. The puppies grew stronger too, their fragile limbs gaining strength, their eyes opening wider to the strange new world that awaited them. They learned to crawl, to stumble, to explore the warmth of their tiny kingdom beneath the blankets. Luna watched over them fiercely, her body sometimes tense with fear, but always protective. In her eyes, the man saw not just survival, but the fierce, unyielding love of a mother who had been through hell and back. At night, when the world outside was silent, the man would sit by their side, his own heart quietly healing as he listened to the soft sighs and whimpers of his small family. The room was filled with the scent of fresh blankets, gentle warmth, and the faint sound of rain tapping on the window pane, a lullaby to soothe broken spirits. But trust was a fragile thing. There were moments when Luna recoiled at sudden movements, when the puppies whimpered in the night, frightened by shadows that only they could see. The man's patience was tested every day, his own doubts creeping in during the quiet hours. Was this rescue enough? Could love truly heal wounds so deep? Yet in the tender moments between fear and hope, a silent understanding grew. The man learned to read the language of trembling paws, hesitant sniffs, and slow blinks, the small signals of trust given and earned. Luna's body softened in his presence. Her eyes met his with something unspoken but profound, a fragile promise of acceptance. One evening, as the last light of day faded behind the clouds, Luna rose slowly and padded to the man's side. She pressed her damp muzzle against his hand, a small hesitant touch that carried the weight of survival and newfound hope. The puppies gathered close, their small bodies a warm, breathing promise of tomorrow. The man smiled, a rare, quiet smile that came from the depths of his soul. In that moment, beneath the worn ceiling and flickering light, the impossible seemed real. The abandoned, broken family had found a gentle hand to hold them, not just in rescue, but in love. The road ahead would be long, the scars lingering like shadows in the corners. But here, in this small room filled with quiet breaths and soft warmth, the first fragile threads of healing had been woven, a testament to the power of kindness in the darkest of places. And as the night deepened outside, the man whispered to Luna and her puppies, a silent vow made in the quiet, "You are safe now. I won't let go." Days melted into weeks, and the little sanctuary that once echoed with whispered fears now hummed softly with the gentle rhythm of healing. Luna's coat, once dull and patchy, began to regain a fragile sheen, catching the soft sunlight that spilled through the threadbare curtains. Her eyes, no longer dull pools of exhaustion, flickered with moments of alertness and quiet curiosity. The puppies, tiny bundles of vulnerability, transformed with each tentative step. Yeah. Lively limbs finding strength, bright eyes opening wider to the world's subtle textures. The man watched with a quiet reverence, marveling at each small victory. The first time a puppy's playful bark cut through the silence, the slow wag of Luna's tail when she sensed safety, the soft warmth of a breath against his hand. The room, once cold and shadowed, now brimmed with a fragile light that seemed to pulse with hope. Every day brought new challenges and new moments of fragile grace. Luna's wounds healed, but the invisible scars ran deep, shadows in her eyes that spoke of trust betrayed, of nights spent fighting for life on the edge of despair. Sometimes, when a sudden noise startled her, she would stiffen, muscles taut like a bowstring, her breath catching in a trembling pause. The man learned to move slowly, speak softly, to let silence fill the gaps where fear might have once lived. Feeding became a ritual of tenderness. The man prepared small bowls of warm food, watching as Luna's cautious sniffs gave way to eager bites. The puppies tumbled in a messy pile, their little mouths desperate for nourishment and comfort. It was a dance of survival and love, a slow reclaiming of what had almost been lost. Nighttime was the hardest. The room would fall into a fragile quiet, broken only by soft whimpers or the restless shifting of tiny bodies. Luna would rise, pacing with protective urgency, her eyes scanning the shadows for ghosts only she could see. The man's heart clenched with helplessness, but he never left her side, a steady presence in the darkness, a promise made without words. Together they weathered those long nights, the man, Luna, and her fragile brood, learning the unspoken language of healing. Trust was not given all at once. It was coaxed out like shy blooms in spring, nurtured with patience and quiet devotion. The mother's once frayed spirit began to mend, her fierce love transforming from desperation into quiet strength. In the soft light of morning, the man would sometimes catch Luna gazing out the window, watching the world beyond with eyes that held both fear and wonder. It was a look that said she remembered the harshness, but was beginning to dream of something more, a life where warmth was constant, where her puppies could grow without fear. The man's own heart healed alongside them. He found himself lingering in moments that once would have passed unnoticed. A soft lick from a puppy, the way Luna's eyes crinkled when she was finally at ease, the delicate breath of life blossoming in the quiet room. In their fragile resilience, he found a mirror to his own longing for connection, for redemption, for something unbroken. But healing was not linear. There were setbacks, days when Luna refused to eat, when a puppy whimpered from a small injury, when shadows crept back into their fragile world. The man fought exhaustion and doubt, sometimes wondering if his efforts were enough, if love alone could truly mend wounds so deep. Yet every time the family pulled back from the brink, it was a victory written in soft sighs and hopeful glances. One afternoon, as golden light filtered through the dusty window, Luna slowly rose to her feet and walked unassisted across the floor. The puppies tumbled behind her, a messy, joyful parade of life reclaiming its space. The man's breath caught, tears pooling in his eyes as he watched the scene unfold. This fragile family, battered but unbroken, stepping boldly toward an uncertain but hopeful future. In that moment, the room felt full of light, of love, of quiet miracles. The scars of the past still lingered, but they no longer defined them. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming something new, something stronger. The man knelt beside Luna, his hand resting gently on her head, a silent thank you passing between them. She nudged his palm, a soft gesture of trust and belonging, and as the puppies circled them, tumbling and barking with newfound energy, the man knew this was only the beginning. The light outside was fading into evening, the sky a canvas of soft pinks and purples. But inside that small room, the healing light glowed steady and warm, a beacon in the night, a testament to the power of love, patience, and second chances. The fragile light of healing was tested in ways no one could have foreseen. Just as the mother dog, Luna, and her puppies began to find their rhythm, a shadow crept in, quiet but relentless. Illness struck, a silent thief in the night, turning their fragile progress into a desperate fight for survival. One by one, the puppies grew listless, their tiny bodies racked with fever, their bright eyes dulled to a haunting glaze. Luna, once the fierce guardian, paced restlessly, her body tense with fear that mirrored the man's own tightening chest. The man's hands, once steady and confident, trembled with exhaustion and anxiety as he tried to soothe the family he had sworn to protect. The warmth of the small room was thick with tension and quiet prayers. Outside, the city was waking, cars rumbling, distant voices weaving into the morning air. But inside this small sanctuary, time seemed to hold its breath. Luna lay stretched on a soft blanket, her once fragile body now steadier, stronger. Around her, the puppies tumbled and played, their energy bubbling like a stream released from a long winter's freeze. Their eyes sparkled with innocence and mischief, free now from the shadow of fear that had once clung to every breath. The man sat quietly nearby, his gaze lingering on the family he had fought so hard to save. His heart swelled with a quiet pride and something deeper, a tender awe at the resilience etched into every wag of Luna's tail, every curious sniff of her puppies. The scars were still there, shadows in the corners of the room, and in the subtle hesitations of their movements, but they no longer defined this fragile family. Instead, those scars were threads woven into a tapestry of survival and hope. Luna lifted her head and met the man's eyes, a silent exchange passing between them, a conversation without words, and her gaze was gratitude, trust, and the fierce, unyielding love of a mother who had endured unimaginable pain to protect her children. The puppies circled them both, their little bodies warm and alive, a testament to the promise of new beginnings. Outside, the sky deepened to a clear blue, the sun rising higher with each passing moment. The gentle morning breeze slipped through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the cold, harsh world they had left behind. It was a breath of life, a possibility of dawn's quiet promise. The man reached out, his hand resting lightly on Luna's head. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing briefly in contentment. The room was filled with warmth, not just from the sunlight, but from the bond forged through struggle, kindness, and unwavering hope. Memories of the past lingered, those long nights filled with fear, the relentless storm that had swallowed them whole, the desperate moments when hope seemed like a fading shadow. But those memories no longer held power here. They were transformed, tempered by the quiet strength of survival and the enduring power of love. The man's thoughts drifted to the journey ahead, of finding a forever home for Luna and her puppies, of watching them grow beyond these walls into a world that would hopefully be kinder. But for now, there was peace in the present moment, a sacred stillness wrapped in the fragile light of dawn. She gazed out with eyes full of cautious wonder, the weight of the past still in her posture but softened by a newfound grace. The puppies followed, tumbling at her feet like a living poem of hope and resilience. The man watched, his breath steady and calm, as the family embraced the promise of a new day. In their fragile movements, in the gentle warmth of their presence, he found the true meaning of rescue, not just saving lives, but nurturing souls, mending hearts, and lighting the way out of darkness. Outside, the world moved on, indifferent and vast. But here, in this quiet room filled with soft light and gentle breaths, the story of survival had reached its first true end. It was a beginning woven from pain and kindness, struggle and tenderness, a story that would live on in every wagging tail, every playful bark, every quiet moment of trust. And as the sun rose fully, spilling light across the room like a benediction, the man whispered softly, "This is just the dawn." The mother dog and her puppies, once shadows in the storm, had found their way home.